Hello everyone and welcome to the Kiki London YouTube channel. My name is Amanda and in today's video we are going to be doing a fun and colourful Pride inspired set of nails, so I really hope you all enjoy watching. Now, another thing that I quickly wanted to mention that's related to Pride is for the month of June, which is Pride month, to celebrate, Kiki London have a sale on the website where selected products are buy 5 get 1 free. So if you haven't already, do check that out because it's a perfect time to grab some new colors or stock up on your favorites. So to start off this design, I wanted to show you guys how I apply my black and white gel polish. Now, black and white can be a little bit finicky, especially when they're high pigmented. So here I've got Classic Black, and what I do whenever I'm working with any of the black colors in the Kiki London range, I apply them super thin. So as you can see here, I wiped off majority of the product from my brush. So I'm going to show you once again. So I'm wiping off a lot of that product from my brush, completely cleaning off one side and leaving a small amount of product on the other side. And for that first coat, I'm applying it super thin. I'm not worrying about it looking uneven. I'm not worrying about the coverage. I'm just making sure to apply it nice and thin. And I'm going to do this the same with this with Classic White as well. Now, the reason you want to do this with your black and white shades is they are super highly pigmented, and a lot of the time, if you are ever going to have curing problems, it will be with black or white because of how highly pigmented they are. So if you apply your black or white gel polish, or any of your colors to be quite honest, too thickly, what will happen is the product won't be able to cure properly. And a lot of the time you see this commonly in black and white. So that's why I thought I would point it out in today's video. So yeah, if you apply them too thickly, what will happen is sometimes you might not be able to notice. It might look fine, but you might notice that the product doesn't last as long, or you have peeling or chipping issues. If you do apply it too thickly though, you can also notice this because when you bring the product out of the light, it may look as though the product has wrinkled. And then if you were to poke the little wrinkled areas, you would see that the product isn't fully cured and it would feel squishy. So the way around this is to simply apply your black and white gel polishes nice and thin, and this goes for both the coats as well. So as you see, we're going to come in now and apply that second coat of color, keeping it super thin. So again, completely wiping off one side of the brush and leaving a small amount of product on the other side of the brush. I like to maneuver it so that product is on the lower half of the brush rather than covering the entire side. And then we're just going to paint on that second coat nice and thin. And because a lot of the time you'll find that the colors are highly pigmented, even though you are applying them nice and thin, they will still give you full coverage. So with black and white especially, a little bit goes a long way. If you feel as though, like I did here, I just didn't have enough product on my brush and the brush is really dragging where there's not enough product on the brush, then you can go in and add a little bit more to your brush. But I always find it better to go in with less product on your brush than you think you need rather than more, because if you need more you can go back into the bottle. But if you start off with loads of product on your brush, you end up chasing it around the nail, and when you're working on short or natural nails, this ends up in things like flooding the cuticles or getting product all over the skin. So to eliminate those curing issues, keep your products nice and thin and don't overload your brush. Now, the reason I thought I'd point this out in today's video is I have had a couple of questions on Instagram, and a lot of the time when the curing issues happen, it seems to be with black. So I thought I would point it out for anyone who is new or struggling with those before we move on to the fun part of the design. So for this set, we've got our base colors down. We've got 2 black bases and 2 white, and these were both done with the Classic Black and White from the Hem Free range as well. And then we're going to grab some colors. So of course I wanted this to be Pride inspired, so I've taken 6 bright shades. We have Queen of Hearts for our red, Milava for our orange, Yellow Caution for our yellow, Acid Green for our green, Diva for our purple, and then lastly Neon Prince for our blue. Now 5 of those shades are from the Neon Vibes collection, and then Queen of Hearts is one of the new reds which I wanted to add in. Now Queen of Hearts does have a little bit of an orange undertone, so I weren't quite sure how well it worked. I think maybe I should have gone for more of a classic red, but nevertheless I feel as though the set ended up quite fun. So on the first 2 nails, we're going to do some marbles using those colors. So I'm going to use 3 of the colors on one nail and then 3 of the colors on the other nail. So we're using those 6 shades from the Pride flag. And I'm going to start off by applying those colours to my palette. So I'm going to start off on the first now by using Queen of Hearts, Milava and Yellow Caution. Now the red and the orange did blend together a little bit too much, a little bit more than I was expecting, but this is what's great about marbles, it's all one big experiment. Now before I did start applying these colours to my palette, I did pop down a layer of blooming gel, so I've left that wet on the nail, popped down my 3 colours, and then taking the Kiki London dotting tool, I'm just going to swirl them together. And this is where I felt as though the red and the orange just merged together a little bit too much, but I still went with it because I knew I was going to be adding some hearts over the top of this, and they're going to have a little bit of red in them anyway. Now, one of the things I love about marbles is the different colours, they always act differently. So for example, in the colours we're using here, the yellow blooms a lot more than the red and the orange, and it gives you that really smoky look to it. If you didn't want this effect, you could use a different yellow. I would suggest Glow Stick, which is from the Pastel Neon collection, because that gives you the more of the creamy consistency. But for this particular design, I kind of felt as though it ended up giving quite flame vibes with the red, yellow and orange against that black base. And then because I don't want this marble to cover the entire nail, I want it to blend into that black. I'm just gonna let it bloom. So where we've applied the blooming gel to the entire nail, but the marble only to the half the nail, is going to bloom over that black base. Then here what I'm doing is I'm just taking my striped liner brush, nudging those colours around and adding in a little bit more red, just to try and get a bit of a pop and a bit of a difference between the red and the orange. But it was quite tricky at this point as well with my striped liner brush. If I'm noticing any little air bubbles in the gel polish, I'll pop them as well before we pop that into cure, and I'm just going to leave it to bloom for a few seconds. I don't want it to bloom too much because I quite liked the look that was going on. And then I'm going to pop that into cure, and whilst that's curing, we're going to do the same again but with the blue, green and purple. And you'll see with these 3 shades, because these 3 shades in the collection have more of a creamier consistency to them, they don't bloom as quickly, so you can end up with quite different looks. So acid green has a very similar consistency to Yellow Caution, so you do still get a little bit of that smoky vibe to it, but Neon Prince and Diva have a little bit more of a creamy consistency. The other shades in that, so the Yellow Caution and the acid green, they kind of remind me of like highlighter color neons. They're really fun and really bright, where these colors have the more creamier consistency to them, so they look slightly different, and it means they act slightly different in the blooming gel as well, which is really fun and really unique, because it means you're always going to create different looks with your marbles depending on the colors you use. So I swirled them together same as before, picking them up same as before with my round nail art brush, and just gently wriggling them in to that uncured blooming gel, just covering that tip part of the nail. If you did want this to have that more smokier look like the previous nail, you could leave it to bloom for a little bit longer, or use less of your products as well, which would help it bloom quicker. But I wanted to show you guys the difference in the 2 marbles. One looks a lot more smoky and one looks a lot more detailed. You can see the colours here aren't merging together as quickly because the difference in the consistency of the product. So it's just really, really fun in my opinion. I love seeing the difference in how marbles turn out. So again, I'm just picking up little bits of color. I want to add in a little bit more green, so I'm picking up a little bit more of that limelight, and then not limelight, acid green, and then I'm just pulling those colors down a little bit. And again, if I spot any little bubbles, I'm making sure to pop them before we pop it into cure. And I really, really loved the effect of this one. I love how the colors look against that black base. Now of course the neon effect would have popped a little bit more over a white base, but I did want to add a little bit of black into this set, as I love black and neon together. So again, once I was happy with how much that had bloomed, I popped it in to cure for 30 seconds, and you can really see the difference in the 2 marbles here. So the orange one did get to bloom for a little bit longer, and the products have a slightly thinner consistency compared to the blue and the green. Moving on to the next now, we're actually going to add all 6 of those shades to our palette. So we've got Queen of Hearts for our red, Milava for our orange, Yellow Caution, Acid Green, And then, like I said, all for 5 of these colors are from the Neon Vibes collection. And then the other color that's in the Neon Vibes collection is a pink as well, which is a really, really pretty shade. So once we've added all of those shades to our palette, I'm going to do this design. We're going to do a tie-dye effect with the striped liner brush. So I'm taking my striped liner brush and we're going straight in, first of all, with Queen of Hearts. And I want to try and make sure that these stripes that I'm going to be painting on the nail are roughly the same thickness. You don't need to worry about your lines being super thin or super neat, but you want to make sure that you're applying the gel polish so that each color is going to touch. So it doesn't need to be neat because you're going to be dragging your brush through to create the tie-dye effect. So it doesn't need to have super crisp sharp lines, but you want to make sure each of the colors is touching and that there's not a gap in between, so you're not going to see any of that white. And the great thing about the neon colors especially is they really pop over a white base in only one coat. So when you're doing nail art like this, you don't need to stress about 2 coats. You'll see that on this nail and the next design that we're going to do. Now, in between each shade, I'm cleaning off my brush on an alcohol wipe that's just out of shot. Again, this step's really important because otherwise what happens is you end up mixing up your color. So if you ended up taking the orange into the yellow, it would adjust the color of it, and then the tie-dye effect would look a little bit muddy and messy, where for this design, you want to make sure each of the colors are looking nice and crisp. So do make sure just to have a little alcohol wipe or a little bit of acetone on a cotton pad next to you, that you can give your brush a clean between each color. And then I'm just going in, like I said, each of those colors, I'm applying them a little bit thicker just so that we can drag the brush through and get a nice crisp line going through them for that tie-dye effect. But I'm not stressing about applying them too thickly. You just want to make sure that you have got a nice amount of gel polish down so that you can get that really nice effect. Now, I ended up doing all 6 of the colors, and then there was a little bit of space left at the bottom, so I come back in and did another line of the red and the orange. Again, depending on the length of nails, this is going to differ. If you wanted to make sure that you are only going to be using all 6 of the shades, you would just need to kind of map out the design a little bit better. So I would have needed to do thicker lines, but for the look it still worked in my opinion. And I haven't done any tie-dye nail art in ages, so it was really fun to do this. Just wanted to also mention, you want to make sure that you're leaving all your colors uncured, so we're not curing anything until after we've finished that tie-dye effect. So here we're just finishing off with our final color, which is the Milava. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to touch up any areas where, like for example on the blue, there was a little gap where you could see some white, so I was just touching that up. And then I'm going to give the brush a clean so that there's no product on there. And then we're going to start in the center, and I want to go crossways like what we've done and just drag through to start creating that tie-dye design. So you want to go down in one direction, clean off your brush, and then go in the opposite direction. So we're going to flip the brush around and pull through them, and I just find this so satisfying and so fun to do. It's so easy to do, but it's such a cool design. Like, it looks as though it would be harder than what it is. So after each pull through the colors, I am cleaning off my brush. Again, this is to keep the colors nice and crisp, nice and vibrant, without mixing them together too much or muddying them up. So I'll pull through, and then you're going to pick up a little bit of product, so I'm wiping that off on my alcohol wipe and then going back in and doing the next line. And I'm making sure to do this after every single line so that everything does stay nice and neat and nice and crisp. And you can see that tie-dye effect happening there, and it just looks really, really fun. Of course, you can do this with any colors, but I always find it looks best in neon. I think it's just because the whole tie-dye look suits neon so well. So once you have finished with that and you are happy with it, you want to pop it straight into cure so none of those colors start running or mixing together. And then we're going to pop that in to cure for 30 seconds, and then this is what the design looks like. And of course, you don't have to do an entire nail with this. You could do a section, you could even do like a French design. I just thought I would do an entire nail so we can sort of look at the technique. On to the 4th and final design, we are going to use all 6 of those shades again, and we're just going to create like a rainbow swell going across the nail. And again, for this design, I'm going to keep with my striped liner brush, as this is the easiest nail art brush to work these kind of designs with. And again, because we're working over that white base and the neon colors are quite pigmented, you're only going to need to do 1 coat of this. So it's nice and fast, especially if you're doing any kind of salon nail art and you maybe just want to do an accent now of some artwork like this. Working over that white base just eliminates needing to do that 2nd coat of color. Now, what I am also doing here is when I've done 1 colour, I'm flash curing that for 10 seconds. So I done my swirl of Queen of Hearts, and when you're doing your first line, that's where you want to create any bends or grooves, because then the remaining colours are going to follow those bends and grooves. So depending on how you want your design to look, bear that in mind when you're placing down your first colour. And then when we've done the Queen of Hearts, I flash cured this for 10 seconds. The Kiki London lamp that you see pictured when I show my cure times, sorry, that has a 10-second flash cure function on it. So you've got a little button that gives you 10 seconds, and this just freezes your gel polish in place. So when you're flash curing, it's not fully curing your product, but for nail art purposes, I find it amazing because you're not going to have to worry about smudging or your colors mixing together, especially when you're doing designs like this. But it's also great if you're doing any kind of detailed nail art where you feel as though you might make a mistake. By flash curing, it means that if you make any mistakes, you can wipe that off without wiping off the entire design. So here, for example, I didn't show it on camera, but I made a mistake with the yellow and I was able to wipe that yellow off, but because we'd flash cured the orange and the red, they stayed in place. So it's a great feature to use for any kind of hand painted nail art. I also find I use it a lot as well when I'm applying any kind of gel press on nails too, and you just need to freeze them in place whilst you're applying the next nail. So it's a great feature to have on the lamp, and if you haven't already got the Kiki London Deluxe LED lamp, I would highly recommend checking it out. I've had mine a couple of years now and it cures everything absolutely brilliantly, especially like going back to the start of the video, if you are using the black and the whites, you need to make sure your products are fully curing. So I'd highly recommend, if you are having any issues with your Kiki London colours and you're not using the Kiki London lamp, to check that out. So here we're just going through adding on each line of our colours until we're very nearly at the end, and this is a little bit time consuming. I did speed up the video, but I think it's so worthwhile because I really loved how this nail turned out. I think this was my favourite, which I did think the tie-dye nail was going to be my favourite, but I really loved how this one looked, and I feel as though this one has the best pride look to it as well because of the wavy lines kind of give off that flag vibe as well. So we're just coming in lastly and doing Diva. And then one thing to bear in mind, although we've been flash curing each of the colours for 10 seconds, to make sure that everything has cured properly, do make sure that when you've finished all your nail art, you cure everything for a full 30 seconds, because obviously that last shade, the Diva, didn't have any time cured, and the one before would have only had 10 seconds. So although the red would have had quite a few flash cures, the rest of the colours wouldn't have. Now, to finish this design off, I wanted to come in and add the hearts top coat. This launched around Valentine's time, I believe, and I don't think I've used it too much since, but I thought a pride set of nails needs some hearts, and the easiest way to add on some hearts is with the hearts top coat. So as you can see, it's a clear gel top coat, and then you have got some pink and red little sequin glitter hearts embedded in the top coat. Now what I'm doing is I don't want to add on loads. So normally if I wanted to get a more full coverage, I will give the bottle a bit of a roll, and that brings some of the hearts to the top, because a lot of them do settle if the bottle's been sat on your shelf. But I didn't do that this time because I don't want to pick up too many of the hearts. We've got a lot of nail art going on in this set, and I kind of just want the hearts to be just a few hints here and there. So what I'm doing is I float the gel on, and then this is going to release some of those hearts, and then using the bottle brush, I'm just nudging them around until I'm happy with how they're placed. And then sometimes you'll see I come back in with the bottle brush and just make sure everything's nice and smooth and even. If you don't feel confident doing it this way, you can also use your stripe liner brush or a dotting tool to move those hearts around in place until you're happy with how they are. But because they are in a kind of a ever so slightly thicker top coat than the no wipe top coat, I wouldn't say it's as thick as the rubber top coat, but they do sink in and you end up with that encapsulated feel to them. So as you can see, I'm doing each nail and then popping it back on my little nail art stand so that the product's going to self level. So if you was doing this on yourself, I would do all 5 or all 4 nails, however you'd prefer to cure, but then before popping them into cure, I would let the product just self level for a few seconds around those hearts, and then that gives that embedded feel. You don't feel any of the edges sticking up or anything like that. And then of course, once you have top coated all of the nails, you want to pop these in to cure. Here I'm just being extra fussy and nudging those hearts around until I was happy with them. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to add the heart on the 2 marble nails, but I kind of felt as though it might look a little bit odd without them on those nails, so I went for it. But I was kind of just not wanting to cover up too much of the marble effect. And then the same on this design, I actually only want 2 of the hearts. I don't want to cover up any of the flag effect that we've got going on in the center. So ideally, if you didn't want to add loads of hearts to the design, you could just pop some down on a palette and then just add on a few hearts, cure those, and then come in with another layer of top coat. But I was just doing it for ease with the one bottle. So this is what the nails looked like once they had all been top coated. I popped them all in to cure for a final 60 seconds, and this is the finished result. They are so bright and so crazy and so fun looking, but I absolutely loved them, and it was really fun having a theme to follow. So I hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment below, and hit that subscription button if you haven't already. And if you are celebrating Pride, I hope you have a wonderful month. Thank you all so much for watching. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.